Hello everyone, and welcome to the third in our series of workflow colouring black and white photos. Today we're looking at hair, and we're going to introduce the new workflow approaches of using a solid colour layer, and we're going to mask some of the areas, so limited areas of colour will show through. I'm going to show you how to group different layers to help organise your workflow. So this is our image at the end, and I thought I'd show you before we start our starting image. What we are doing for our hair is the whole layer is now coloured. Compare this to our previous workflow where we painted areas. Today we're going to look at using the entire layer coloured, and then we're going to use a black sheet or a mask over the top of that, and where we paint white, the colour will show through. Now the advantage of using a mask is that it's non-destructive and you can easily go back and re-edit any time. So if we look at the skin here, I have a solid colour and I've painted white where the skin might be. I've chosen a slightly different colour, pink, for the lips, and you can see it's quite subtle on the cheeks. And here when we look at our lips area, I decided it was quite pale. So when I turn the eyeball on and off, you can just see slightly darkens the lip area. And again, we've got a curved layer, and I've just darkened by pulling the line down. And we'll go through and show you how this works. Here I have a folder group for eyes. So we have colour for the eyes, and we have a curved layer for the eyes, a curve adjustment to lighten up the area, so you can see if we look closely at the iris. If I turn all of these off one by one, you can see there's the colour. It's okay, but it's not particularly interesting or exciting to look at. Then we've added a curved layer. So I've lightened it by lifting up the curve from the centre. And again, I've another lightening curve. And I've placed that all into a container or folder and named that eyes. We have our shirt, and then the coloured background for the ground and the sky. So let's get started. Here's our starting image. And we're going to work with solid colour layers. So if we come to the base here, the very top option is a solid colour. Now, currently we have a solid colour white layer, and it is all showing because our mask area, or the second layer, is white, so that shows everything that's there. Let's wander around. What is interesting is using a solid colour, I can move and see colours changing really quickly. I really quite like this as the approach. Let's see if we can find a skin colour. The other way with a solid colour is you can use here your swatches And I had a skin colour open recently, so it's showing right up the top. Yeah, that works for me. So you could also get your solid colour through here, layer, new fill layer, solid colour. So the adjustment layers are the curves, hue saturation that we looked at previously, and the solid colour. It's exactly the same as using this shortcut. And if we go to layer, solid colour, that's there. Now again, I can click on the solid colour and that's selected because the white is around the colour, or we jump and now the white, the mask itself is selected. I invert to black to hide, and that's Command I on the Mac, Control I, or to invert there, Command I makes it white again. Image adjustment and invert. Right, and you can see adjustments, invert, and it's the same shortcut that's there. So black hides, white reveals. So we've got skin. We'll just rename it. And use the quick selection. Oops, remember Alt here is normally positive. You don't want the hair. Remember, the smaller you make your brush head size here, the more detailed. If you make it larger, like I just have, it becomes more coarse. I'm just using the square bracket keys to resize at the moment. Oh yeah. Okay. Now, another time saving that you gather by using a solid colour and a mask is that we're only going to fill with black or white. So here we have white as our paint bucket. Select the mask and fill that in. Now don't panic because we're going to put that on colour. It's quite strong. There we go. Command D for deselect. And we've got our skin colour. Now the ear's not perfect, so with the mask selected I choose the brush and I can paint with white. Make sure that we're about 50%. There we go. Now you can see here the quick selection I did. Oops. I use the shortcut X for swapping between white and black. So to paint black on a black mask will hide everything that's there. Now we might drop this opacity down for the hairline, paint with white, kind of feather it softly. That's too strong. So you can see it doesn't matter how often you go back over the areas. You can just pick it up. Whereas if we'd painted on a blank layer, every time we wanted to change something, we'd have to erase and add. think this is going to be a tricky area with the hair. Now we've got eyebrows, so if we use black and maybe 20% opacity, just going to remove some of the skin colour from the darker areas, and 100% black to remove the skin colour from the iris completely. Okay, to navigate I'm using the space bar, and just when I go to space creates the hand, and I can just drag the picture around. And the eyeballs, I'll often leave it maybe just 20% with black. Let's see how that looks. When we're doing the eyeballs large, we did the ivory colour. But when it's just a small part of a total image, you can kind of get away with leaving just a tiny bit of pink for the blood underneath. So there we are, we've got our skin. So repeat, solid colour layer, and this time I'm going to look for hair colour. Select the mask, currently it's showing everything, and invert. Now we're going to select the hair. And again, I don't worry too much if I get a large amount. At this stage, hold down the Alt or Option key, and you can see this flicks from, normally I would have my settings on a plus or to add a selection, add to the selection. If I hold down the Alt key while that is active, it just becomes a negative, so that's a really quick way to add and subtract. Now it still doesn't have to be perfect. Photoshop gives us some options to further refine this. So you could hit select and mask for refining. So making sure that you're on the mask here, not the solid colour, but on the mask itself. Select and mask. So this was my selection. It's fairly coarse. Let's have object aware, and the recent Photoshop has refine hair as an option here. Let's see what it does automatically. You see the difference to the edge was really quite good. If we come over to our settings, we could try maybe 3 or 4 just to soften the edges once more. Now we're looking not too bad. If we come up here, you can see we have a quick selection tool, which we've just used, the refine edge brush, and the plus or minus, so you could just paint in directly. What we're going to try is this central one, refine edge brush. And we're just going to dab the very edge of it. Increase the size. Oops, not that far. And we're just going to dab with the outer part of the circle, just just extending into the non-masked area. So where I'm placing the center of my brush head is slightly towards the area that I'm keeping. You can certainly watch specific videos on how you set up. And this is just a very quick demonstration. One of the other settings that you might like to try is the shift edge. So for fine hair like this, I would not have this feather turned on because we want the individual strands of the hair selected if possible. And when we come through here, this will give us a nice natural effect when we apply our colour, because there will be some variations. Shift edge means make the mask or the white area larger or smaller. So currently the base is 0. If we go positive, you can see we get more, or we can select even less. So for today, I'll just leave it at 0. You can type that in and click OK. Now don't panic if you see it doesn't quite fit, because you can go and return at any time. And this is where it's 50% of the pixels are selected. So with white selected, grab our paintbrush and click inside that selection. Okay. Change this to colour, and we can deselect. Now, selection wasn't too bad. Just make that selected, and you can always just, oops, that's a bit high opacity, so just a low opacity. The soft hairlines are often needing a little bit of attention. Could even put a touch on the eyebrows if you wish to. And if you're thinking that might be just a little bit too red for your liking, it's very easy to double click your solid layer. Let's move this up here. And we have hue, saturation and brightness. So with the radio button next to brightness, this bar will go brighter or darker. And you can see that changing live on the model's head. Saturation, more or less saturated. And hue is the colour. So that was the change. We wanted dyed hair. You can drag, as I showed, across, around. Sometimes you might not know for each image where you want to go, what you want it to look at in the end. So there's our hair done now. And next, let's do the eyes. So solid colour, new one. Doesn't really matter what we pick first because we know we can change it. Select the mask, Command I. And hardness, you might go up for this. Fairly low. We can take it, mega bright. You'll see I'm trying to miss the pupil as much as possible, and I'm painting white, not not green because we've got that solid colour there. Let's change that to colour. Oops, missed, sorry. And that is really powerful. Now I knew that the outer of the eye was darker, so I've just avoided that as well. Now we can reduce the saturation, and here, well, I think it's a funny colour, so oops. Even if we want green, we can always try different, because irises generally look better with a strong contrast, which is soft light or overlay. Gives you it will make the whites brighter, the whites in the iris underneath. I'm still not a fan of that. And if we've done our eye lessons, you could repeat the eye several times. In fact, let's do a quick one. Solid colour. And we can actually use white. Hide it. Paint at low opacity, just some, make sure it's white. Just a bit of random colour. We could use maybe screen, don't panic. Or lighten, let's have a look. Just in those spots. I think maybe I'd prefer some yellow now. That's better. Right. As a benefit of the mask, you can see I just did this really quickly, and I could have used a hard edge, smaller brush, and it would have been preferable. But with a mask, you can also select your mask, filter and blur. So we can apply a Gaussian blur to what we've just painted on the mask. And that has softened it quite a lot. So now I can increase and go back, even maybe hard light. There we go. So you could do multiple layers with the eyes, and in fact what we'll do is add now a curves layer just to increase the contrast again in that area. So if you use the scrubby brush, click in the eye, that's the darker area of the eye. Can you see how that's lightened? But we don't want everything lightened, we just wanted the eye lightened. Select your mask, invert, and now we can just paint with white and lighten, oops, paint with white. You can see it doesn't need to be totally exact because there are variations in the eye itself. Might have done this a bit too fast. Curves layers or levels can also change to blend modes. And I might go to the weird looking one but drop that back. There, we're getting there. So I'm really just wanting to get a bit of life happening in the eyes. I'm just doing the reflection a little bit stronger. The eyes reflect. So there it is without that curves adjustment. Now if we select and hold down Command or Control those three layers which we knew were the eyes, click the folder down here and it's grouped them. Nothing's happened other than, see how they've become indented. We'll turn them on. One good thing is now we can turn all of the eye layers on and off very easily. Double click, eyes. Another good way to keep track of what you're doing is you can colour these layers. So if I right click, go right down to the bottom, I can colour the layer green, just as a visual reminder. Okay, so where are we up to? Let's have some lips and eye colour. So solid colour, new layer. Because that's where we are. Select the mask, invert the mask, and to soften the edge. So if we go back and have a look at my brush, here hardness is 0. No, leave it soft. Increase the size of the brush. And just a little bit of pink for the lips. We could do a selection, but this is really just a tint. So when we go to colour, just the slightest hint, and we might just make it a little bit darker. Right, so let's go to the top of the stack. Let's colour the shirt. Select, invert, go back to our quick select. Look how beautifully that does. Select your mask, make sure white, paint bucket, white, and colour. And drop that. We don't want it quite so orange. We can drop that down. Okay, Control D for deselect. Our next layer can be our sky. Hue, soft colour, select, invert, selection tool, and now keep an eye here. See how the line between the mountain and the sky is slightly blurred because it's out of focus. Select that. D is for the default black and white, and X inverts. And I'll go back to my paint bucket, select the mask, and jump to colour. Bit intense, drop it down. Now the next solid colour I'm going to do for the ground. I'm going to hide that and hold down Alt to remove the sky, making sure that's not over. Alright, so if we do some more grouping, click the folder, backgrounds. If you wanted to make it blue, right click, right at the base, turn that blue. Just as a quick visual. So we have groups that we can turn on and off. We can rename, colours, and create our background. If you're ever not sure which part, because I didn't name this as we went, Option and Command, and click on the mask. Alright, so I clicked on the black section. It automatically selects whatever is white in the mask, or the content of the mask. So perhaps I want to apply a slight darkening to that area. Once I've selected it, with something selected, if you create a new adjustment layer, it will automatically apply a mask to it. So here I'm using a curves layer. Now I want to make it slightly darker, so we could use the scrubby brush, click on the lips, because that's particularly what I was looking at. It's just darkening up. So again, another time-saving hint if you use masks is that I used the selection or the mask from what I'd painted on for the lips and cheeks just by holding down Command and Option, clicking the mask, and it selects. So you can make any number of masks repeating. You don't have to redraw everything all of the time. And here, just before we go, let's drag this down a little bit. There we go. So that were our lips sections there. And we'll take all the 3 sections of skin, click the folder, and we can name it skin. And right click, and I can colour it red just to remind me that's what we're doing. So today we've learnt solid colour, we've learnt masks and selection with the hair and refinement. Thanks for watching. There's plenty to practice there.